So let's get this meeting started. We'll call the meeting to order. And we'll start with Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Roll call. Mr. Hall notified us that he cannot be here tonight. Mr. Hogue? Present. Mr. Merlington? Present. Mr. McGrath also let us know he can't be here tonight, unfortunately. Ms. Naprowski? Mr. Nixon? Here. And Mr. Conley is here. I don't see any planning officials or engineering or legal representation here to recognize tonight. So I'll move right ahead to the minutes of the last meeting. That'd be on page 3 of your packet. And we'll need to look those over, and if I could get a motion to approve of those.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll second that.
Any discussion or issues on the last meeting's minutes? Hearing none. We can vote to approve that then. All in favor, please signify with yes.
Yes.
Yes. Aye or yes. Sorry. How about aye or yes? To me, it looks like that passed. So the minutes are approved. Next, we need to approve tonight's agenda, which of course is on page 1 of your packet. I just need to blow it up here big enough to actually see it.
Yep.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion, issues with the agenda we need to address? Hearing none. All in favor, please signify with yes or aye, either one, if you would like to approve tonight's agenda.
Aye. Yes.
Yes.
All opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Yeah, it's very small on the screen there. Next, item 6, it's time for public comments. Those citizens wishing to speak on agenda and non-agenda items will be allowed a maximum of 4 minutes each to address their concerns. It's the only time during the meeting the citizens are allowed to address the planning commission. Please state your name and address for the record if you would like. If you have business in front of us, I want to add on here, if you have business in front of us, and you're already on the agenda, you're not required to speak at this time. You can speak later, but you are also welcome to speak during the public comment time as well. Okay. Anyone online?
Ms. Race, do you have a public comment you'd like to share at this time?
I do not. Thank you for asking.
Okay, moving on then, and with no public comments. Item 7, conflicts of interest and ex parte communication. Any of those to report from members of the planning commission? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to scheduled public hearings. We're going fast tonight. So the public hearing that's arranged for tonight is item 8A, an ordinance amendment to chapter 40, section 4, division 2 to modify section 4446 walls and fences. Is there anything, Mr. Womack, that you would like to let us know about that, or?
We've gone through this very thoroughly over the last 18 months or so. Last meeting, ready to make a recommendation, and felt that we needed to do a public hearing. So public hearing today, and then you guys can make a motion to the city council to approve if you would like.
So since this is a public hearing, not to contradict what I said earlier, but if you have anything you would like to speak on regarding this particular issue, this is your opportunity to do so.
I guess I would. Rose Powell, Cedar Springs City Council. I guess I'm glad this is going on because I cannot forget the horrifying experience of some folks over there who built like a 6-foot tall steel wall along their driveway, right up to the sidewalk. So if their neighbors were trying to back out of their driveway, they had no sight of a kid on the sidewalk. They couldn't see down the street in one direction. So I'm glad to see this happen with the new ordinance. And that will cover that. That was really a bad situation. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose.
If I could make one mention, and that was not permitted under the old ordinance either.
No.
That
But it
just
still
happened to
happened.
be somebody who kind of just decided to put a fence up.
Any other public comment? Online, any public comment? Hearing no more, we'll close the public hearing on the fence ordinance. And we will move on to item 9, site plan reviews. 9A on SLA and zoning review for 3839 East Elm Street to be used as a 3-unit multifamily home.
Mr. Conley. I think you may have missed your action.
you
If
need
you
a
want to
motion.
take an action,
I
you'd
forgot-
like
I
to.
forgot we had that. So I could feel everyone in the room knew what was going on except for me. So let's go back to that. We haven't actually left item 8. And we need a motion to actually recommend that to the city council before we can move on.
I'll make the motion. That we send it to city council. I'll second.
Any discussion? In case you haven't been discussed out on this particular issue over the last 18 months. Okay. Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please signify with aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Did we just move on from fences?
Oh, my God.
We'll
No
never,
worries.
we
When
will
it
never
closes
be
on the
done.
agenda.
We'll never be done with
We
that.
can revisit it if you
Yeah,
really,
it'll-
really
it'll
want.
be back.
I'm sure it will.
And we have more goodness with other stuff, so don't worry too much.
Pool's coming up.
Yeah, pools.
Now on to site plan reviews. Item 9A, the SLU and zoning review for 3839 East Elm Street to be used as a 3-unit multifamily home. And I probably gonna throw that to you, Mr. Womack, to give us some background on that.
Sure. So as this board is aware from the past, we've had a number of buildings and homes that have been illegally modified in our community from what is permitted to what is not permitted. We have taken the decision to review some of these and primarily in the B2 district. We've been granting special land uses to some of these so that they can continue that use indefinitely into the future. We primarily do this because banks tend not to want to mortgage a property that is non-conforming. So when this property came up, we identified as not having a special land use, which would be required in the district for the proposed use. So we've asked the applicant to submit the special land use and zoning forms, although they're fairly thin in the information that they provided to you. I bring it to the planning commission and I guess ask for your thoughts and interpretation about whether or how to move forward on this particular situation.
I clarify before you move on just a bit. Is this the city contacting the property owner, or is it the property owner contacting the city to do this? It sounded like we
Yeah,
were.
I can't remember specifically. So of course, the city is generally aware of what's going on in the community regarding home sales. And we do have some real estate agents who are aware of the city's rules. So they will make first contact. Other times we simply see properties up for sale and the code enforcement officer will contact the property owner. So I don't know specifically what happened in this particular situation. Maybe the applicant would have better information.
Okay. I just was curious if that related to overall policy or how we're handling those.
Well, part of the trying to identify when people do something illegal with a property is being proactive about it, which was not done over the last 30 years. So that has been the case a few times, but in this case, I don't know the answer.
Okay. Anything else you wanted to say before I interrupted you there, Mr. Womack?
Well, so you see in my notes that there is a potential problem with this property. We've reviewed a few of these properties in the past. And they've been duplexes in the B2 district. And duplexes are specifically called out as being a permitted use with a special land use. However, this is a triplex. And so I think there is an interpretation there that would permit it. But I think the planning commission has to talk it through and decide if that's the interpretation that they agree with. Or I have a number of options I think that we could use to move forward from here to try to determine what to do with this property. But I'd like to hear from the applicant and why they think that their proposal is legitimate and legal under the city's ordinances.
Is there someone that would like to represent that tonight?
I'm Mark Hoskins, 619 Mile Road, Cedar Springs, is where I live. I'm also the realtor involved with the sale of this property, the listing realtor. The seller actually lives in Jackson, Michigan, Mr. Rowland. And he has owned this property since June 13th of 1992. It was a 3-family before he bought it. And he's kept it a 3-family all these years. It is my understanding in talking to Mrs. DeGroot that it's not been an issue, no issues there at all as far as the renters or anything else. He's always maintained the property and kept it up. He has decided to put it on the market and sell it. And we have the buyer here, Mr. Decker, is here also tonight. And want to make sure that we can still maintain it and use it as a 3-family. They're all 1-bedroom apartments, and there's 3 of them in the house itself. There's two lots there right now that are separate. And the parking spaces are there. I think you have all the information on that as far as where that is. The city manager has mentioned about putting them together. We haven't done that yet. We can do that if that's a requirement. But that's where we are right now with it.
I guess the first question I have, if you don't mind, on the extra lot, is that where the parking is for the apartments?
That's where the parking is right now.
So nobody's really parking on, they're using the other lot for parking.
Correct.
Yeah, I did drive by today, but with all the snow, it was kind of hard to tell.
From the way it's laid out, it doesn't look like each lot is the same square footage.
Yeah.
I don't know why they didn't split it evenly, but they did not at that time.
Old lots.
Any other questions?
Questions I can answer?
There's still parking in the back of it, right? Across from 40 East Elm,
40 each.
right across so there's still parking in the back of it, right? So you got the cannery, there's still parking right there, right?
Yeah, yes, I think there's some other rental units there right behind. And they have parking. This parking where it is right now is just for this property.
Right.
So Mr. Nixon, just to clarify, we're talking about 2 separate properties. There's a 38 and a 39 East Elm. 39 East Elm is where the home is located. 38 is the parking lot adjoining that, which is a private parking lot specifically for this home. And under the city's ordinances, no apartments should be approved of unless they've identified their parking. We also do not allow parking lots to exist on a different piece of property from the primary principal use which they serve. So that's the reason Mr. Hoskins mentioned possibly combining the properties, which I think should be a requirement if we were to approve of this.
Okay.
But we haven't even gotten to that point. What point we're at still, in my opinion, is we're talking about a triplex. And under the ordinances cited here, I'm sure, 4577 subpart E, residential uses in the B2 and B3 districts without frontage on Main Street Subpart 1, only one family and two family dwellings used for residential purposes and located on a parcel, et cetera, shall be eligible for special land use approval. So what this board should be talking about, what Mr. Hoskins should be talking about is subpart 3, which is a special approval may be granted for the limited purpose of permitting the continued residential use of an existing dwelling, notwithstanding other provisions of this chapter. The question is, do we read this ordinance as a whole, that subpart 1 takes precedence and no triplex would be permissible? Or do you think that you can read it with subpart 3, especially with that part that says, notwithstanding other provisions of this chapter, is overriding subpart 1? So that's really the part we need to be talking about right now. Beyond that, combination of the whatever, that's probably for the next hearing.
And yeah, I think we need to address that because I'm not sure that was clear, but because we haven't had a public hearing on this, we can't actually approve this tonight, one way or the other, because we haven't had a public hearing.
Yes.
So right now, we are more in a fact-finding and discussion mode, because without a public hearing, we're not allowed to pass any special land use. I have concerns, I have to say. To me, it's pretty clear that the way that the ordinance is written right now, that only 1 and 2 family dwelling units can be in a B2. To me, item 3 there, where it says a special approval may be granted for the limiting purpose, to me, that sounds like the way it was written, that is a qualifier, that is saying, if you have a 1 or 2 family dwelling, that we can do this only to continue a residential use of the dwelling. But it looks to me, again, other people may have a different interpretation of this, that both of these have to be satisfied. That it has to be a 1 family or a 2 family dwelling unit, and it has to be for the purpose of continuing the residential use. I'm interested to see what other people on the planning commission think, but that's the way I'm interpreting it. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, and
I get that out there first.
yeah, I kind of agree. And like what Mike went back to, if you read the one paragraph by itself, it kind of gives you a little bit of a different interpretation, but I mean, I would almost, Mike's kind of has no, it's like, we can refer this question to the city attorney and let him read through it and see what they believe is the best answer to that. It's kind of a complicated spot right there.
Yes, and this is without getting into any kind of value judgment about whether or not it's a good idea to have this or that. Any kind of I feel bound by this at the moment, that how can we move forward when this says it can only be a 1 family or a 2 family?
I agree.
That's kind of where I'm at.
Yep.
But again, this is not just my decision.
Is this something that would be grandfathered in over the years?
It's grandfathered in if it was given permission originally. We have found no records, at least I haven't found any records to indicate that it was ever granted a special land use to begin with, or variance for that matter.
It was just converted at one time.
Yes,
Before 1992.
yes. However, it doesn't matter how long something illegal has been occurring. If it's still illegal, it's still illegal.
He was not aware it was illegal. He's kept up on his permits every year. He's done everything that way every year. You've approved it. I would have thought that if it was an illegal residence, that you would have said something years ago.
Well, that's
When
not
they've
the
walked,
planning commissions
well,
to say,
when-
that's not our job to say.
when they've walked through it and approved it.
So now you're talking about rental registration and inspection,
Yes, correct.
and that is also not indicative about whether it has zoning approval or not. We do rental registrations to prevent people from housing people in closets. Make sure that they have minimal floor space, make sure that they don't have a water heater in the closet of a children's room, which we have found. Unfortunately, that is not indicative of whether it has zoning approval.
Yes, Mr. Nixon.
The way the way I see number 3 is it's a special approval may be granted permitting the continued use of the existing dwelling. So a special land use could be given for the continued use. So if we found that it has been used, there could be a continued use of it. That's the way I interpret it when I read it.
And that's as valid as I can tell. I can't say one way or the other what it is. That's why I'm saying I'm not an attorney. And I would be open to any kind of measures that we can take to split the difference here. I'm just going by what is in front of me at the moment. I'm having trouble with it.
So, Mr. Conley, even though you're not an attorney, this board is sitting in judgment of what the ordinance says. And part of what your job is to make these interpretations. Now, you can state right now, you don't feel comfortable, you don't want to take a vote, you want to pursue some other action, such as reference to the city attorney, and ask for his interpretation. Or you could vote and say, you know what, I agree with this interpretation, I don't agree with this interpretation.
Is there, I guess the question is, if we're voting at this point, or are we voting? We weren't going to be approving the special land use tonight regardless, because we haven't had the public hearing.
Correct.
So a vote at this point,
It would probably be appropriate for a straw poll vote.
Okay.
Because
That's what I
Like we've
was-
done before.
Because if this board is 5-0 against, saying that, sorry, only 1 and 2 family homes are permitted at this point, then applicant has to go back and rethink their strategy of how they'd like to move forward. But if you're open to some other action or some other interpretation, then, you know, you come back at the next hearing, the public hearing, and you could vote for approval at that point, along with whatever interpretation you guys have.
That phrase limited purpose, I guess don't understand what that means by limited purpose. I mean, that's a very broad interpretation. I mean, is this like in an emergency, you could use this for housing somebody? But I mean, I've been looking at that phrase the entire time going, I don't get what that means.
Yeah,
So
I did not
that's the
write-
part I'm hung up on.
I did not write this ordinance, so I don't.
Yeah. Well, and I get that. And I understand you guys are in a hard spot. 'Cause you're getting something that you didn't have. None of us were sitting on this planning commission in 1992. Right? I was in middle school.
I mean, if it was a straw vote, I mean, if we're looking at just my view personally, we know that it's been a 3-unit since at least prior to 1992. I like the fact that there's the extra lot. I would want to see them combined, so they couldn't say, okay, we're gonna build another single family home here, and then it takes away all the parking. You know, the fact that it does have a whole other lot for parking, so they're not using street parking, because you got the businesses right there. And you got the gym there, you got all the other stuff. I mean, if it was a straw vote, I would probably vote to approve that it's always been a 3-unit, and I'd be fine with it being a 3-unit.
I'm with you with the
That's my
combining the
personal-
parcels, making
would
sure there's
have to be
storage
combined.
space for each unit.
Yeah. You know, I would like to see that the lots are combined and it's parking there, not on the street. Not street parking, because then you're taking them, because you're in a business district. And if they're parking on the street, they're taking parking away from the businesses that are there.
Mr. Merlington, I think you're getting a month ahead of yourself.
I'm just,
But at this point, we
Throwing it
have
out
to
there.
kind of make a determination then on subpart 3 of that ordinance. Whether you think it's at least open to the interpretation that you could allow continued residential use of an existing dwelling, notwithstanding other provisions of this chapter. And keep in mind that whatever interpretation you guys take now will probably be beholden to into the future. Now, thankfully, this ordinance specifically only deals with B2 and B3 districts. So it does not affect the R1s. It doesn't affect any of the residential districts. But it's an interpretation for you guys to make based upon whatever evidence you feel has been presented to you, or you can ask for additional information.
So I guess the straw poll question that I would ask is, do you feel comfortable that subpart 3 allows for a triplex or a 3-family dwelling with the language that we have. So I guess I'll ask that question. What's your opinion of this?
I agree. And the housing market and the availability for rentals is very thin as it is. And I think that it's been a long-standing and well-maintained property, and hopefully any future owner would maintain that as well. I'm comfortable with that.
So but just to be clear,
Yeah, the language.
I want to make sure that because we have to have a legal basis for if we do eventually pass this next month, we have to have a legal basis to do that. So is your interpretation that item 3 provides us that legal basis?
I think that it does.
Okay. Mr. Merlington?
The best I can understand it, same continued use, I think it does.
Mr. Hoag?
I guess I would like to have some clarification on that phrase, limited purpose, just to understand what that means. And that's the only part that's hanging me up on this. I've read through this a few times this afternoon and again today, and I just don't understand what that limited purpose means. It's very,
If you want my word nerd interpretation.
go right ahead. I'd be open for that.
So I mean, the words limited purpose is directly affecting the following phrase of permitting the continued residential use of an existing dwelling. What it's saying in other words is it's not for the limited purpose of, well, the house is yellow, therefore it's permissible. The only reason why something should be permitted to get an SLU is the permitted continued residential use of an existing dwelling. That's my interpretation. So it doesn't matter whether it has bushes out front. It doesn't matter whether the mailboxes.
Yeah, that's not what I'm worried about. I'm more worried about, what is the variance from the ordinance? What does that mean with limited purpose here? I mean, it seems like it was a variance at some point from that ordinance, legal or illegal.
Well, so if you want
I don't know
to
what that
kind of look at the
means.
history, because we're dealing with this all over the city.
Yep, yep.
And make sure we don't use the word variance because that's a specific legal meaning.
That's fine. I'm definitely not a lawyer.
I anticipate what really happened was some point in the 80s or 90s, people started buying up single family homes because this is obviously a single family home. And then they started putting up walls and new doors to the exterior. And they did that without the approval of the city. Because the city at that time either didn't have administration or a council that wanted to pursue this, or they didn't have an effective code enforcement officer who would identify and bring these things to bear, right? Handshake deals, somebody's brother-in-law said, yeah, you can go ahead and do that. The problem is we are operating on a basis of laws. And the law says you can't do this. And that's been the law since the 70s. So it doesn't matter whether in 92 it was permitted by a handshake deal. In the 70s, it was not permitted. So now, these have been going on for 20, 30 years. And people are trying to sell them and would do whatever else. But you can never take an illegally converted property and make it legal by the passage of time. Except for, in this ordinance where it's saying the limited purpose of permitting the continued residential use of an existing dwelling. That's the only out we have at this point. Otherwise, we send the applicant to the ZBA and say, you have to go get a variance. Otherwise, they'd have to convert it to a two-family probably.
And that's the paragraph that kind of got me, the continued use.
No, I was reading the whole phrase in there. It's just I kept getting stuck in that limited purpose thing, not quite understanding what it means.
I mean, I would still love to hear what the city attorney thinks of that. I mean, we could have that done before the next meeting, right? And get his interpretation of what he believes.
Sure, of course. Now, the city attorney tends to land like a 747. He'll come in with a 10-page report about what the law says.
Yeah.
And while I love Jeff Sluggett, he's great and amazing at his job. That will help remove, I think, some of the flexibility that this board maintains.
Okay, yeah. So,
And frankly, I don't know if we necessarily need a legal opinion. I think this is something that you guys, as common laypersons of the community, can make that interpretation.
I guess, I probably opened a can of worms with this conversation, but I think I kind of agreement with Snaparowski there that, we have a housing crisis right now, and removing how many units we have at the moment, I think is not good for anybody anywhere. But I'm also want to make sure that we're in line with the law too. So I guess I would be okay approving this as long as the properties are combined and there was storage space for each unit, bringing that part at least up to code.
And agreeing to that under the paragraph that the continued use, because that's what we're
Continued
trying
use,
to discuss right
That's the
now.
only part where I guess I'm
Yeah.
okay with this
Yeah.
continued use. But again, I want to make sure that we're not setting ourselves up for issues in the future when we run into these two. So I'm torn on this one personally.
Well, they also have to be reviewed for the special land use considerations, which is obviously part of the next thing that we'll have to talk about. So I think there is some policy control here. Even if you guys want to go with the legal interpretation that this is acceptable under that term, they still have to show that they've been, compliant with International Property Maintenance Code, and they have appropriate water and sewer and all these other things. Parking. Because I don't think this board would be even considering this if they didn't have their own parking.
Agreed.
If this was a street parking situation that certain slumlords do and say, go park somewhere else, I don't think this board would be considering it.
Not without the extra lot that they have. If they didn't have that lot and have off-street parking, I would be a hard no.
I still, again, nothing personal, but it says what it says for me. And to me, it's clear it's meant to only allow 1 and 2 family dwelling units in the B2 and the B2 or the B3. We can, this may come up and we may change ordinances in the future, but right now this is the established ordinance there with the city council sometime before me put in place, and it hasn't been changed yet. So, but it's 3-1, I can count. So I'll ask Mr. Nixon what his opinion is, but obviously if we have 3 votes to continue on with this at least. Mr. Nixon.
I mean, as long as we don't, I think the SOU is fine, but as long as we don't shoot ourselves in the foot with other properties that would possibly be looking, we've talked about that before, where other properties looking at, well, you did this for one, now do this for me. I want to make sure that we don't.
Which is a policy consideration, which you're not making your decision based upon, I'm sure. But at the very least, it sounds like we have 3 votes to consider this in the future. And in the meanwhile, I can do additional research and try to find out any other information I have on this.
And any information that we can get from the current owner about what permissions or what communications they had regarding this would be
great.
very helpful for us to establish intent, all the above. So
Yeah, obviously, if the applicant has any information about approvals that they were given at the inception of the conversion from single family to multifamily, that has great bearing, because that would change the legal interpretation greatly.
absolutely. So
Can I ask, I was looking at number 4 here, talking about the expand, restore, or alter the existing dwelling. It has to do with lot size. We do require them to combine lots if we're gonna run to a different issue.
Kind of.
Okay.
So we're talking about 2 similar but related things. There is a non-conforming use for what the property is used for, and there's non-conforming status for the physicalness of the building itself. So obviously, one of the main things we look at is setbacks. Under the city ordinances, you have to be 30 foot set off front, 30 foot set off the rear, and 10 foot set off the sides in R1 district. I don't know if this building would meet that requirements under the current lot size, but requiring that they combine the 2 properties is only going to expand the property. So I don't see how that would negatively impact it. Now, if this building were to burn down, then that might come into play. But as far as the use of the property, I don't think it affects it.
That's a totally different conversation. We gotta rebuild the whole thing. I get that.
Yeah.
I'm just worried about combining the lots and then them running to another issue where we delay you guys for months on end. And we don't want to do that. It's not our goal is to delay anybody. It's just to make sure that our city looks nice and the people here have a nice place to live.
and it doesn't sound like they're making changes to the building or
Yeah.
alterations to the building, so.
Yeah, it
if
was
they
just a
w-
lot size
yeah.
part in there that I saw. If we
Yeah.
require them to combine those lots, which I think we're
Right, which,
all kind of in agreement of that, making sure that the parking and the building are on the same parcel.
I would think that we can approve it otherwise because we have the thing on the books about not having parking as a standalone use. Parking has to be an accessory use on a
Yeah,
product,
yeah.
on a, and that's citywide. That's
Yeah.
not just in the B2. So the only way that this could be approved as an SLU is if those are brought together, in my interpretation.
An applicant was made aware of that. a
Oh.
month ago, so they're aware of that.
Again, it's not just to be ticky-tacky, it's just, that's the way it is. Is there anything else that, I'm sorry, I left you standing there the entire time.
That's okay. I didn't know if there were more questions.
I'm really horrible at that, so if you would like to sit, you're welcome to, and if we can certainly call you back up, but I just now realized you've been standing there the entire time.
That's fine.
So, Mr. Conley, you don't, well, you do need to take an action, probably to table at the very least.
Mhm.
But, I mean, you guys could refer this to the city attorney if you want. Like I said, I think it decreases your flexibility to do that, but it would put us on firmer legal grounds. I think from a policy perspective, there's probably minimal impact. But the next month will give you the opportunity to research that issue. See if there would be other impacts if one interpretation over the other. But other than that, applicant's been made aware of what I anticipate this board will do. Obviously, the combination of the properties is prime. I believe some of the other things I told them they've reviewed, they found that they meet those requirements already. But one of the rental requirements is they have to provide either central air or air conditioning units. The driveway has to be paved in the right of way, things like that. So yeah, I guess either refer to the city attorney, take some other action, or table it for next meeting.
I did mention referring to the city attorney, but I kind of agree with Mike that that's probably gonna take away from what we have.
Feels kind of like we're calling dad in.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like
And
we're
once
calling it
dad shows up, you
know,
never know where it's gonna go.
I mean, and I'm usually pretty confident with the city manager's report when it comes to that.
Uh-huh.
He is.
So should we, I would take a motion to table it unless someone
Plus,
else
we
has
need
another
the
idea.
public hearing, no matter what.
Yeah, we can't do
Yeah.
anything to a public hearing. That's like state law or
I
something.
definitely agree.
So, can I have a motion to table this then? Someone want to do that?
I'll make a motion to table it.
I'll second it.
And this is until the next meeting.
Yep.
Yes.
So, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor of tabling this to the next meeting?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion's tabled.
And Clerk, do you have the meeting date for next meeting up top here?
March
It is in
8th,
our
isn't it?
agenda
I think I
packet.
got it on my calendar.
It was
Should
the
be
first and-
exact same
it was
day,
the
'cause
first and
February
then we-
March Smear each other.
Cause there was a couple that
Yeah,
we
right.
moved around.
It was the first,
Oh,
I
yeah,
think,
we
and then we
moved
moved it to the
It's
8th
the
because of the election.
Yeah,
Okay, so it sounds like the next meeting's on the 8th of March.
yes.
Yes.
Yep, you got it. I just saw it.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I appreciate you guys kind of having this. This is the first meeting I've ever. kind
Please
of been
introduce
to.
yourself. please.
Oh, Mark Decker, from Northview. So, but no, I appreciate you guys doing this. This is great. I feel like I'm learning a lot, so it's kind of fun to see that. I did want to kind of touch base on, you had mentioned the paving of the parking lot or driveway, or what is all involved in that?
So under city ordinance, you're required to pave within the right of way all driveways. So we do not require parking lots to be paved unless it serves customers, such as at a business. So long as the parking lot is, I believe gravel is one of the options, which I think this currently is, that's permissible to stay as it is.
Well, I'm sorry, would that mean in the right of way, it'd have to be paved from the edge of the road to the edge of the right of way?
Correct.
Yeah, so basically,
Which I understand is already done.
Yeah, the
Looking
drive-
at Google Earth,
the
it looks like it's done.
Driveway apron.
I
and
did
sidewalk.
drive by the property physically, so I can't. I don't know.
Awesome. Cool.
well, yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm
well,
looking at
I
this.
don't think it's getting to the right of way though.
I don't know. It's
Cause
close.
it's probably a 66-foot right of way. There's an approach that leads to the sidewalk.
Yeah,
But I
it
would
does
believe
end
the
on the
right of
sidewalk.
way probably goes beyond the sidewalk if it's a 30. if it's a 66-foot roadway.
It looks like it's close, but I suggest, as I believe
There's
Mr.
a lot
Womack
close.
said, that you could work that out with Mr. Womack exactly.
Yeah, so even though I say the right of way, really it's the right of way or the sidewalk.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm not gonna make them pave beyond the sidewalk.
Oh, okay.
That would look a little weird, having 3 feet of pavement just.
Well,
on
and
the
of course,
sidewalk.
part of the reasoning is when you go from a gravel or dirt driveway in the street to a paved sidewalk, it destroys the sidewalk.
Just well, in the fact, I got a close up of the sidewalk right there where that driveway goes in, the sidewalk is destroyed.
Yeah, it is pretty. beat
I
up.
mean, it is,
At least from the Google Earth pictures.
it's a giant pothole.
Yeah.
Isn't that a brand new sidewalk there with just.
No.
Unless they replaced it. I don't know. when the
Well,
image
that
is on
could be,
here, but-
maybe I'm looking at an old street view.
But I mean, that's what happens. Plus you introduce lots of gravel and dirt into the roads, which now requires a street sweeper. So every driveway that gets touched gets paved in the right of way now.
Okay, so maybe that's all new and I'm looking at an old street view.
Okay,
That's on that.
well, we'll definitely get a chance to look at it again next month if that's the case. But awesome, we'll move on. This is, I buried my agenda, sorry. So other business.
That's on the other side, yeah, I mean,
10, other business, item A, motion to recommend the approval of Williams and Works Planning Professional Services Agreement to the City Council.
So technically you guys are the hiring authority, but I know the city council likes to be tickled occasionally. And they do pay your budget. So I guess I would ask that you recommend to the city council that we hire these folks as the planner. Mr. Conley and I did have a sit down with Mr. Andy Moore, who's a nice young man. I think he'll work out fine for the city, and you guys reviewed his work, I think, the last meeting. Mr. Conley, did you have any thoughts about meeting with Mr. Moore?
He seemed to be professional and know his stuff, and I doubt that he can possibly be Mr. Johnson, but I think he will come close.
I don't think anybody could be Mr.
So, and I think that's the best we can ask for at the moment. So I was very comfortable with him. So I'm also a poor judge of character, so take that.
And a quick question, I mean, will Mr. Moore, will he be like kind of reviewing the people we just seen before the next meeting? Will we be getting his opinion on this?
Could.
We could, okay.
Now, normally, the planner works off of the escrow account we take for site plans.
Okay, so
Not escrow on this,
Okay.
of course.
I was just quick question.
Yeah, so it'd be out of your budget.
Yeah.
Which we do have a small budget, but I can ask if you guys want. But he's also not an attorney. He's not going to give you
Yeah,
the legal
I know.
interpretation.
We just got spoiled by Mr. Johnson.
So I guess if we have, unless there's some questions, I'll take a motion to do so. We'll approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second your motion.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of approving the motion, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? And the motion carries. All right, the next item under other business was 10B, discussion on the swimming pool ordinance.
Wait, we get to start all over again now, huh?
And this won't be controversial at all.
Ironically enough, the main problem we have with swimming pools is fencing. So I believe I put both of the current city ordinance and a Sparta ordinance for you guys to look at. Our ordinance is woefully outdated. And I think the bigger problem is when you are a local person or, the city manager, you look at the local ordinance, it says nothing about building permits. It says nothing about plumbing permits. It says nothing about fencing. Under state law, I believe that any pool that is deeper than 24 inches is required to be surrounded by fencing.
I believe it's 42 inches from what I thought. I put 2 pools in.
Okay.
And what I was always told is the above ground pools have 42-inch sidewalls.
Yes, so
A 42-inch sidewall doesn't need a fence.
So my understanding is similar to that, and that is if you have a 42-inch or higher sidewall, that sidewall acts as the fence.
Okay.
So long as you have a locking mechanism for the
Where the
ladder to
deck-
get into it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it requires to have a fencing around it. Well, we have all sorts of temporary fabric, type
The new
deals
pools, the blow up pools.
that they sell at every store in the book. And we get into lots of disagreements with people who say, oh, well, I bought it at the store, therefore I can use it. It would be very helpful to reference back to a local ordinance that specifically indicates you are required to have fencing. So I like the Sparta ordinance. I'll probably draft one similar to that for your consideration. But this has been waiting in the wings for about 16 months, waiting for you to be complete with the fencing ordinance. So I guess I'm open to any thoughts, questions, or concerns you have about this prior to moving forward.
I have to say, as a pool owner, I assumed that I needed a fence and that we had something on the books that didn't look, but I assumed that we had something because I've always heard about the whole attractive nuisance issue. And so when we put one in, we put that in after we put our fence on. Seems common sense to me that you don't want to create a situation
We
where
want
it
it
can't
safe.
get around.
You want it safe. I mean, I put in underground pool and I was in Cortland Township at the time, but I just went by what Fox Pool said. They're like, you need this fence around it with these locks, and just went by what they said.
A professional pool company probably knows what's required.
Yeah, but like what you're saying, these blow up pools, or not even blow up now, they got the poles and the fabric ones that they're big pools now. You can get a big pool.
Yeah. It's 52 inches deep and 18 feet across. I mean, it's-
Yeah.
And I bought it at Meyer.
It's not just the drowning aspect. There's also the, what do they call it? Cross contamination, where you have a hose line connected into the pool with a bunch of chlorine in it. Now goes into the water system.
Without a backflow preventer.
So there's a few things that we'd like to address with this. So if no objection, I'll bring back I guess, draft ordinance for you to review.
Well, I think that's what we need, right?
Sounds good.
Yeah, if we don't have what I assumed we had, we should probably
We
have
need
it.
one. I mean, what's on the books right now for pools?
Pretty ridiculous.
Pretty ridiculous, probably written in the early 1980s.
So I have a question. If we get into pools, is this also are we going to have to go back into fencing a little bit because pools require fencing, or?
Kind of.
Oh,
Except we're not gonna be reopening the fence ordinance. The fence ordinance is set, the
Okay.
council will act on it.
okay.
But one of the requirements of pools over a certain size is that they have either a 42-inch sidewall
Right.
or fencing of some sort. And which will hopefully be detailed in the ordinance we put together.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would think from
I
a
didn't want to
liability
open
standpoint,
that
most
can of
people have
worms
that
again.
kind of Insurance anyways.
Yeah, and that's
a
where
good point.
the homeowner's insurance really doesn't kick in, because they don't realize that you have a temporary pool,
So, anything else on the
No.
swimming
No.
pool orders before we move on then?
Wait,
Just
no,
make,
am-
just make sure if you use Spartas that when, if you look at 1A, actually put inches behind whatever they did for 24. It's been driving me bonkers ever since I read this. It was like, it just says 24 on there and I was like, feet or inches? I know it's inches, but
Meters.
it's not
But it was
clarified.
yours.
It's made me itch since
You
I read
probably
it.
should have let that out and see if you caught it or not.
I thought about it, but
Or wasn't hands. like-
yeah, who knows? Yeah, stones. I don't know.
Item
I'm not
11.
European. I'm not British.
Item 11, open discussion for issues not on the agenda. Looks like we have quite a bit of correspondence on here. Is there anything, without going through it one by one, unless we need to go through it one by one, is there anything that we need to address on here or just bring attention to it?
Your rec plan was approved, sent on to the DNR. The Cedar Springs master plan for the Heart of Cedar Springs is being worked on. You can see a copy outside of the room here. Madam Clerk has put together your tenants report and minute index. That's a lot of work for her, but it can be very useful for you guys. And the Mr. McGrath resignation letter, he did want to be here, but he unfortunately suffered a COVID close contact.
Thank you. Staff comments. City manager.
Is 7:50. This is probably the shortest meeting we've had in 5 years.
I saw that, and then I said, we might hit 8.
We were pretty short last week, so I think we were
can
like
hit it.
8:02.
No comment. Thank you.
The city clerk?
Just a reminder, if you'd like to be paid for your city or your planning commission meetings, you do need to fill out your tax forms, get them returned back to Darla. If you don't fill out those forms, you won't get paid. So just a reminder if you want that.
On my list again last night. I lost the sheets again already.
I can see if Darla can email to you.
I found the email and so, yeah, I'll do it. It's on my to-do list now. Thank you. Planning commission members, do you have any comments? None? Okay, well, I just have one. Thank you for all the hard work, Ms. Johnson, for
Yes.
that, the PC minute index. I'm guessing some of the issues that we have all the time around here about trying to figure out what passed and what didn't 10 years ago will not plague the people who come after us 10 years from now, because that exists. So thank you very much. And city council representative, you're not obligated to, but okay. And the planning consultant is not here unless you want to take that role.
We're hopeful that Mr. Moore will join us next month. I think he's still trying to sort out, because we told him first Tuesday. Then we realized about 25% of your meetings are not first Tuesday. So, yeah, I think he was ready to come in on March 1st or whatever. And then when we changed it up on him, he said, oh, I don't know, we have to look. So hopefully next meeting.
Okay. So with that, I think we're adjourned. 7:52.